So I'm going to go ahead and break this up a little bit more. I want to have it be a stacked typography. So what I might even do is just kind of cut this away, create a new text layer, and then just have this as a separate word. So this is where we need to really think about how do we work with our typefaces? How do we kind of arrange them in different ways? So giving away, let's see if we can't put that on stacked. And what I might do is the lowercase looks soft, and I like that, but we really want to have this high impact emotional. I'm giving away $10,000 in 24 hours. So let's do an uppercase, all uppercase or all capital letters. I'm going to go down here to my character panel and just go ahead and do an all cap. And I could go ahead and do that for these two. So at least we're starting to make some headway in terms of how we want to arrange it. So let's do giving away. We want to make sure things are tight as one headline, but we don't want it to be too tight because that's overwhelming. But we want to have it tight enough where it feels like it's one headline or phrase. And so with the in 24 hours, we can make this all uppercase as well, but then it starts to run into each other and feel like a much longer headline. So I'm actually going to make the decision to keep that lowercase and a little bit smaller, and maybe do kind of a different alignment. So just kind of blocking out our typography, just like we do with a lot of other projects. And so this is where we go, okay, we need to break this headline up because there's 4 lines and it's all screaming at me. It's all a little bit too anxious. I mean, it's almost too high contrast. So one thing we can do is we can use contrast with our color and our type. So one thing I might do is go ahead and make this white. So we're just making that type white. And then the $10,000 really stands out. So you notice how that headline automatically reads a little bit better. It breaks it in half. So giving away, pause, $10,000 in 24 hours. Just because we changed the color, it really helps to make it a little bit less overwhelming, but also it helps it read better because it's broken up. So using contrast with size, weight, this is kind of one of those factors in action. So one thing that's really popular to do is to layer type in photos. So one thing we can do is bring all of this type, make sure it's below our layer, kind of see if we can't find an opportunity to have a letter or two go behind them, just to add the layered look a little bit. And it doesn't have to be all the letters because that would make it hard to read, but maybe the G. The G is a very strong letter, and most of the impact or the readability of the G is on the right side of the G. So I think we can afford to have a little bit covered, and then we can just kind of align this as such. And one thing I like to do is have some alignment. So if I don't have alignment on the left, I want to have it on the right. So we can go ahead and make that a little bit bigger so that right side, these letters are aligned. And then we can even do the 10,000 that way too. I can select all 3 of these. I'm just going to do a right alignment just to make sure everything is aligned to the right. And this is when we need to pop in our margins and go, okay, are we going over the margins? You can a little bit. It's okay. It's not a rule. It's just a helpful guide. So you can keep it like this, or I'm going to see if I can't pull these things away from the margin slightly, so it stays in. And then we can also use grids too. We'll use grids a lot in this course later on. So we're getting the basic layout. We need to have some kind of background because right now it's a solid color. It stands out. It does its job. But what can we do to make this even more of an intriguing photo? There's a lot of things we can do. So we're giving away money. And what entices people about money is seeing it, right? But let's not make it be totally overwhelming. Let's make a nice background element with dollar bills. So I have this banknote, and we are going to use this photo right here. And I'm going to bring it into the background. Just going to paste it in, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to make sure I create a smart object. So when I reduce it in size and bring it back bigger, it will not get blurry or have the resolution reduced. The only issue, and this is just a practical issue, when you make something a smart object, is it does retain that resolution, which is what you want, but it makes the file size super huge. So if you don't have a new computer, sometimes having 10 smart objects that are photos can really slow down your computer. That's the only downside, is it does increase your file size of your Photoshop document. So let's frame this. Let's go ahead and bring our layer all the way back. Let's try to frame this. We want to have the 1 be visible so people can tell that's $1. And we need to screen this back. So we could just reduce the opacity and, that's okay. Let's try to do a blending mode. And we're going to use blending modes also a lot in this course. Let's try to find one that blends it, but also keeps that rich blue to it. So we're just going to go through these and find what we think would be the best. See, that overlay has a nice modern, kind of almost gives it a purplish kind of tone, which is very modern. Just kind of cycling through these to find one. We are going to stick with overlay for the blending mode for this. And I want to kind of tweak the background a little bit right now. I just want to kind of add a little more purple to it. So I'm just kind of adding a little more purplish to that. So what we can do is right now we have the background interfering with the type. We can add a drop shadow, or we can keep it clean and just slowly kind of reduce the transparency of the background in just the areas where it overlaps the type. So let's do that using layering masks. So I have our dollars selected and I'm going to add a layering mask. We're going to do this a lot in the class. So on the layering mask, I'm going to paint with the paintbrush. And with most layering masks, when I erase or add to the layering mask, I like to paint with a soft round brush. A hard round is just a little unrealistic. Soft round gives that nice feathered look. So I'm using a soft round brush. I usually like to use a nice big brush to have more of a realistic fading. And we're going to paint, if you don't know this yet, if you have a layering mask, I have the layering mask selected, not the main layer, so the layering mask. When you use black, you can paint away an object. So I'm going to paint away this wherever I paint black on the layering mask. And you can see the layering mask right here where I painted the black. And I can gain it back by switching it to white and painting back. So you can gain it back by white, and then erasing it is, or eliminating it, is the black. So we're going to do that here with the black. We are going to reduce the transparency of our soft brush and just kind of subtly get rid of some of that background so it doesn't compete with the type. We don't want to do that. It's the last thing we want to do. We could even fade it a little bit here toward the bottom so you really focus on the type, and it's just more of a background element. So one thing we can do here is we can add a pop of color. So right now we just have a solid color background, but what's really popular now is having that solid color background but adding a rich blending mode or color on top of it. So we're going to add a new layer, and this is going to be a layer on top of everything. So we're going to add a new layer, and we're going to get that same soft round brush. We're going to make it quite big. So let's make it pretty big. Let's try 1,000 or so. That's probably good. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to paint on a little bit of warmth. Right now we have a lot of cool going on. We have a lot of purples and blues. What if we do this almost sunset kind of vibe on the upper left-hand side? So I have our new blank layer selected, and I'm just going to call this highlight. And I am just going to click. I'm going to go ahead and select a nice warm sunset color. You could do orange. You could do kind of a pinkish color. And let's go ahead and just click once. And right now it's really strong, and that's okay because that's what blending modes are for. We're going to do the overlay or the lighten, one of those two. Let's see what looks better. There's overlay, but it almost makes his skin look a little too red. So let's try the lighten. So the lighten is going to have this nice, almost an Instagram filter type effect to this, and this is exactly how Instagram filters are created, is by using blending modes and colors on top of things. So I'm going to click again once, but we don't want to overdo it. We just want to add a little pop of warmth over there. And we can also do it to his sunglasses, so if we want to kind of reduce this a little bit, we can add a little bit of the sunset color to his sunglasses, warm those up a little bit. Of course, if I have this on a separate layer, I can just toggle that off and on and reduce the opacity if I think it's too strong. Lots of things we can do. So that is before, looks great, but this adds a little richness to it, and we're going to do this a lot when it comes to photography and bringing out sunsets more and doing some things like that later on. We can add a little bit of a drop shadow. It's not going to kill us. I'm not a big fan of strong drop shadows. I like very light drop shadows. So let's say I want to add drop shadows to all of these. So the quickest way to do that from a workflow perspective is go ahead and add it how I like it on the first one. So I'm just in my layers style panel, and I'm just going to kind of add a really nice, look how little I'm moving the handles on those. Just a really nice small drop shadow. I'm going to save this as a style. So I'm going to save this over here, new style, click on here, and I'm going to save this as drop shadow YouTube. And I'm going to include layer effects. Don't have to include blending options because I'm not using it. Click OK. Now to be able to access that, I can go over to my styles panel right here. I have my styles panel. I'm going to scroll down to where mine will be loaded, and I can select all of these and apply the same drop shadow. So it's just kind of a time saver if I want to add a drop shadow to everything and I don't feel like going to each layer and adding the same drop shadow. You can use character styles to easily speed up that workflow. And that's exactly what this class is about, is improving and speeding up your workflow and finding ways to do things faster and better.